Out beyond the edge of everything familiar, past the farthest reach of solar light, where warmth becomes a concept rather than a reality, a spacecraft built by human hands continues its solitary journey. Voyager 2, launched in the summer of 1977, was never designed to come home. It was built to observe, to bear witness to worlds no human eye could directly see. It swept past the giant planets, punched through the boundary of our heliosphere, and slipped silently into the interstellar medium, humanity's lone representative in the deep void. The rest of civilization moved forward. Voyager 2 kept drifting. And then, just last month, it sent something back. Not a routine status report. Not the usual stream of radiation measurements or magnetic field data. What arrived was something no engineer had anticipated, a transmission so precise, so structurally deliberate, and so fundamentally wrong that the scientists who received it reportedly stood frozen in their seats. At first glance, it looked like interference. Noise. Background scatter from the cosmos. But buried within the static was a repeating burst, rhythmic, exact, and unmistakably non-random. When analysts ran the data through decoding protocols, they expected to find a calibration error. Instead, what surfaced was a pattern. Layered. Intelligent. Originating from somewhere that was not Earth. And when researchers traced the transmission back to its point of origin, they uncovered something that made the signal itself seem almost secondary. There was an object near Voyager 2. Not passing through. Not caught in some gravitational drift. Following. In that instant, a 46-year-old machine became something far more significant than a scientific instrument. It became a reflection, one that revealed a truth we may have always been too afraid to fully consider. Voyager 2's onboard sensors, while ancient by modern engineering standards, remain extraordinarily precise. They were constructed to detect the most subtle fluctuations in plasma density, magnetic field orientation, and cosmic particle flow. But in a recent packet of raw telemetry pulled from NASA's Deep Space Network, analysts noticed something that didn't belong. A low-frequency spike, repeating at precise intervals of 11.2 seconds. That is not natural background noise. That is a cycle. A rhythm. An intentional cadence. Engineers initially flagged it as a software artifact, perhaps interference generated by aging hardware or deep space radiation degrading onboard systems. But when technicians cross-referenced the anomaly against archived telemetry from weeks prior, they found an identical pulse that had been quietly overlooked during routine data review. With AI-assisted signal filtering now applied retroactively, the full picture became unsettling. The pulse wasn't just repeating, it was amplifying. Gaining strength over time. And critically, it was not originating from Voyager's own systems. It was arriving from outside the spacecraft. More troubling still, the pulse carried a distinct spectral fingerprint. Analysts identified it as inverted hydrogen resonance, a modification of the electromagnetic signature of the universe's most abundant element. Not raw hydrogen emissions, but something altered. Twisted into a configuration that nature alone does not produce. Some researchers labeled it a rare cosmic phenomenon. Others quietly suggested something far more deliberate. But across both camps, one conclusion was unavoidable. The silence of deep space had been broken, not by noise, but by something that understood mathematics well enough to use it as a language. Using frequency delay triangulation, mission analysts determined that the source of the pulse was in motion. Not stationary, not orbiting any known mass, but traveling on a vector parallel to Voyager 2's own trajectory. Pacing it. Matching it. What made this object impossible to explain through conventional physics was its pattern of movement. It accelerated and decelerated in sharp bursts, with no nearby gravitational source to account for the changes. Every simulation built on Newtonian mechanics collapsed when applied to its observed path. The object wasn't coasting through space on momentum. It was making corrections. Micro-adjustments that appeared to directly correspond with Voyager 2's faint outgoing transmissions. And it wasn't sending signals toward Earth. It was bouncing modified versions of Voyager's own data stream back into the void, like a mirror held up to our technology, reflecting it in altered form toward somewhere we couldn't identify. Speculation spread rapidly across classified communication channels. A derelict satellite from a mission scrubbed from public records? An artifact left behind by a civilization that no longer exists? An automated surveillance platform that had been waiting in silence for the right trigger? Whatever it was, the consensus on one point was unanimous. It had been dormant for a very long time. And Voyager 2's signal may have been the key that turned it on. When linguists and signal theorists were brought into the analysis, the findings took on an entirely new dimension. Embedded within the anomalous transmission were binary sequences that bore no resemblance to any command string ever transmitted from Voyager 2's ground control. When these sequences were rendered visually using pattern recognition algorithms, they produced symmetrical forms, spirals, fractal geometries, and angular alignments bearing an unnerving resemblance to symbolic systems found across ancient human civilizations. Cuneiform, Nazca geoglyphs, pre-Columbian iconography. These were not signals in the conventional sense. They were glyphs, encoded within electromagnetic waveforms. The deeper researchers analyzed the structure, the more coherent it appeared. The underlying logic was non-random, internally consistent, and organized in a way that mirrored how intelligence might encode visual meaning using harmonic electromagnetic principles. This was not noise with accidental structure. This was deliberate communication designed to be recognized only by a mind capable of identifying complexity within complexity. A theory began to take shape. This was not a broadcast. It was an examination. A test to determine whether humanity had evolved far enough cognitively to even recognize a message transmitted at this level of abstraction. If that was the intent, the test had just been passed. Voyager 2 had become an interstellar trigger. And something, somewhere, had decided the moment for a response had arrived. Then came a development that reframed everything that had come before. A young physicist at Caltech fed the transmission into a deep learning cryptographic AI, designed to model recursive communication structures. The system's output was not merely a partial translation. It was a feedback loop. The AI began generating predictive continuations, responses that anticipated the transmission's next logical sequence with remarkable accuracy. That should not be possible unless the signal itself was designed to provoke exactly that kind of response. A recursive architecture. A puzzle engineered to be completed by whoever was sophisticated enough to begin solving it. At nearly the same moment, Voyager 1, stationed billions of miles away in an entirely separate region of interstellar space, registered a magnetic fluctuation nearly identical in signature to the pulse first detected near Voyager 2. Two spacecraft. Two anomalies. A pattern that could no longer be explained as coincidence. The question shifted. It was no longer, what is out there? The question became something far more urgent. Why now? After nearly 5 decades of silence, why had something chosen this precise moment to respond? Just as humanity stood at the threshold of being able to decode what it was hearing. Then Voyager 2 went dark. Ground controllers assumed mechanical failure at first. The spacecraft is over 4 decades old. Component degradation is expected. But within minutes, identical signal loss hit deep space network receivers across 3 continents simultaneously. Stations in California, Spain, and Australia all flatlined at exactly the same moment, 1437 Coordinated Universal Time. The statistical probability of a coincidental simultaneous failure across globally distributed, independent infrastructure is effectively zero. This was not equipment failure. Something had severed the signal from the outside, precisely, cleanly, and timed to match the exact cadence of the pulse Voyager had been receiving. 5 minutes after the blackout, a narrowband radio wave struck Earth from the same quadrant of space. It carried no recognizable internal structure, but its intensity matched signals we'd typically associate only with neutron star emissions. Except this was not coming from a pulsar. It was coming from somewhere near Voyager 2's last known coordinates. And it was approaching. Leaked data from an internal JPL briefing described a foreign object that had begun altering its flight path each time Earth transmitted a command or signal burst toward Voyager 2. Every ping we sent caused a measurable course correction. The implication was deeply unsettling. This object was not simply detecting our transmissions. It was studying the method behind them. Learning how we communicate with our machines. Mapping our protocols. Worse, its revised trajectory was no longer aimed at Voyager 2. It was aimed at us. At our solar system. Analysts assigned it a designation, Echolantern. The name was chosen because the object seemed to operate like a living optical system, absorbing signals, mirroring them, shifting between communication and silence in a way that used our own technology as its navigation beacon. Voyager 2's transmissions had not been a discovery mission. They had been a trail of markers. Not for us to follow. For something else to follow back to us. As global attention locked onto the Voyager situation, something unprecedented